Welcome to The Carpenter's Daughter,
the show where we dig into politics, culture, policy, and faith, and pretty much everything in between.
Every week, we sit down to talk about the issues shaping our world.
I'm Iffy Ike, author, writer, and perpetual question asker.
I'm Alexis Confer, political organizer, artist, and someone who loves a deep dive.
We bring our experiences, our curiosity, and our commitment to community
to unpack what's happening, why it matters, and how it impacts all of us. This is The Carpenter's Daughter. Let's get into it. All right. I am so excited today about our guest. A very dear friend of mine, Laura Kavanugh. We are so excited to have you here in the studio with us today. Laura and I, you might know her as the first female FDNY commissioner, and I will share her full bio with you in just a second. But Laura and I met sharing about a 16 by 16 foot office on the Obama campaign, the re-elect in 2012. When Laura came in to help the final days of that, and we became instant friends, and we moved back to New York City. We've had so many adventures together. But Laura, I am thrilled to have you on here. Let's share a couple of your incredible accomplishments. A nationally recognized leader, Laura Kavanugh, whose path to leadership is as compelling as the work she's done. After spending 2 decades advising leaders through complex challenges, Laura became the 34th commissioner of the FDNY. That's incredible. There's only been 34. That's wow. Wild. And the first woman to lead the nation's largest fire department here in the beautiful New York City, overseeing 17,000 employees and a $2.3 billion budget through nonstop crises, including pandemics, natural disasters, terrorist threats, and line of duty deaths. Her career spans political campaigns, senior government advising, and nearly 8 years in the FDNY executive leadership, where she modernized the agency through technology, transparency, and historic investments in first responders. Known for taking on the most intractable problems, I've seen it firsthand. Laura never shies away from a problem. Laura's been widely recognized for expertise across public safety, disaster response, institutional reform, and has appeared on major national news outlets, including NBC, ABC, CBS, Good Morning America, with features in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Fortune, and more, and now The Carpenter's Daughter.
I mean, clearly, the most beats out all of them, right?
Agree.
Thank you so much for being here. I think we were all, first of all, we're all Obama insiders, adjacent, whatever you want to call it. I was part of the electoral legal team outside
defending
outside
elections
of Philly, fighting judges that wanted to keep people from voting. But then I think we all worked in city government, and that also is unique. And I can't wait to take an even deeper dive into all of the world according to Laura, which everybody should follow.
But it feels like a sitcom name.
The World According to Laura.
Yeah.
Yeah, or LK. We can talk.
It would be pretty weird, but I'm into it.
We're happy to pitch that concept.
And you started off, even before we started, I would love for you to talk a little bit more about what gives you light. We start our show with every guest discussing how's your light. But because you were with the fire department, we have a specific question, which is what are you doing to stay light, and how important is it for your creative light to stay lit? We thought it's funny for us.
It
doesn't matter what anybody
It's a fire reference.
I approve of using fire terminology to make jokes.
Yeah.
My light, as I think we were talking about already when I sat down, is definitely music. I think 2 things have happened since I left city service. One is that because of the constraints of the job, I really couldn't go to a concert.
Yeah.
And so it's been this like diving back into something I love that I was sort of denied for many years. And so I think that makes me particularly obsessed. Like I feel like I'm like a teenager all over again, like going to my first concerts, because I'm so appreciative of the ability to go. And especially like post-COVID and then the job, you know, the many years of like constrained social interaction. Mm-hmm. And so to go to a concert, well, one, just like music moves me. It just does. Like I love it so much. But also you look around and you think, even in this world of AI and community breakdown, there are thousands of people like vibing together in person. And fundamentally, this cannot be replicated any other way. You can't get this online, can't get this through AI. And I think that's actually really like humbling and motivating for me too, because I believe so much in community, to see that it's still both possible and really powerful and still like present down the street from my house. But also I just love music. Like I'm not gonna lie.
Do you have a favorite genre or a couple of
I love it all. I'd be hard pressed to say there's anything I don't like. I think I should give my dad credit. Like he is a big like rock and roll out of the 60s. So like movement music, music for a cause. And he brought me to all my first concerts. He's a Deadhead. He brought me to the Rolling Stones when I was probably far too young to be there in all the best ways. I mean, what he said to me is they're never going to tour again because they're getting old. And that's like funny now because they're still touring and they are old and super impressive. So he definitely gave me, I think, that love of music as both like something to really let go and enjoy, to like really let yourself feel the music, but also that like music can be more powerful. It can move people. So I think my heart lives with like that rock and roll I grew up with, but I really love it all. I love everything from like classical to R&B to rap to country. If it's Dolly Parton or Beyonce, there's really nothing I don't like. I mean, even honestly, like heavy metal is not my thing, but when I hear it, what I think is this is powerful to somebody. Like this is almost like, to the extent a lot of the music I listen to is, I think, girl culture. That's male culture. And like it's important for people to have their culture. So music is definitely my light. And I think I'm feeling a renewed version of the fire is relit, to get back to the fire analogies. Because I was away from it for so long. And I'm so appreciative of just being able to be in it.
Yeah, I mean, that's so interesting. One, Laura did take me to a Charlie XCX concert at Barclays Center. So one, the Jersey Girls and us, it's like fantastic people walk to a concert from my apartment. So like that was something I had never experienced before.
Yeah, shout out to Barclays being down the street from my house.
And then to be there, this podcast focused on some spirituality, but in certain ways, like there's an element of a rock concert that is like kind of a religious experience, like experiencing something in real time together. Like that just felt like the best party you would go to. It was just like, she was like the party maestro. I actually turned to Laura at one point. I was like, was that my dream job that I'm missing? You know, like we love a karaoke, we love a party throwing, but like, you're right. It was like looking around, the joy in the room, people just being so happy to be together. Like people, it was a big investment for people to be there. And I just feel like for so many years, you were unable to kind of just do some of these normal things because of your perception in the public eye. And so as your friend, I was really happy to see you kind of have some lightness and just go out to be in the public eye, because be away from the public eye, because for so many years you had a body staffer and a security detail and kind of moved through the city in a very different way. And that because not only were you a citywide figure, but a national figure in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, music, it's like, I would be hard pressed to determine like what actual album, for example. There's some artists that even if you ask me what's their, like my favorite album of theirs, I would still be like, please don't do it. Like whether it's Stevie Wonder or like Whitney or whatever, it's like, can we just enjoy their contribution and not fight over this, please? But something you said around like the fact that even if it's not your thing, the fact that you know it's somebody else's thing, right? I think that's some of what we are also exploring, is that like while we come together on things that are similar, we also are excited about what excites other people. Like it doesn't have to be our thing. And I think that's something that seems so simple, but we're in a world right now where like if we're not aligned on 90% of you know the things, then like I can't talk to you, I can't rock with you, whatever. And also like you did share, I know you shouted out your dad, but you said your mom was from Detroit, and Detroit is no small area to music, so I'm sure you know there was influence all around. So no more fire jokes from me. So excited to hear what keeps you lit.
Are we allowed to even shout out your own journey, a little bit of music of keeping your sanity, doing a weekly lesson of sorts? Can we say that on the pod?
You're spilling my deepest darkest
I'm sorry. This is
what is it?
Would you like me to confess?
Yes, please.
Because we're at church.
This is breaking news on the pod.
Also, then I'll tell you the very funny story of how I got exposed for doing this. So I was terrified of public speaking. And many people suggested things like acting lessons to help overcome that fear. But acting is not really my thing. I love music. So I decided, to be honest, there are a couple drinks in me when I signed up for this, to sign up for a singing lesson and see if that would help me. And I also have a very quiet voice. So like I was trying to think, overcoming my fear of speaking and making my own voice a little bit stronger. I went to the lesson. I so much fell in love with Tim, who teaches the lesson, that I kept doing it. And it really became like my salvation in so many ways. I mean, not only, and I actually had recordings of me early in my lessons of the speeches I was giving. And then I had recordings of my speeches after I had been working with Tim. And you can actually hear me speaking like from my stomach with more power and breath. So he really did improve my speaking, but he also really did help me with my fears, because it was like this thing was so scary. I'm not a performer. I would never do karaoke, even now, that to have to do it in that sort of intimate environment actually did make it less scary to go out and be speaking in public, especially speaking about things I know. But I kept it a secret for a very long time because I think it was such an odd thing, but maybe for me, it was also just like, it was the one thing that didn't really involve work. Even though I had signed up to do it to be better at my job, I would go into this hour a week. And, you know, Tim doesn't work in politics or city government. He works in music and teaching. And he'd be like, you know, what pop girl is on your mind this week? What new song did you like? We can sing it. And it just was like an hour of, and I think I've been more radicalized on this lately, but of like creativity. And my brain needed it because my job was so trains running on
rigid.
Time.
Yeah.
And the way that I actually like kept this secret for like at least a year before anybody knew. And then I was at dinner with my 2 girlfriends and I slipped up and I was like, oh yeah, you know, Tim. And they go, we knew it. You've been sneaking off every Friday and there's a guy and you're secretly dating him. And we like cannot believe that we don't know about your secret boyfriend. And I honestly just wanted to be like, yes, it is a secret boyfriend, because that would be less embarrassing than being like, I was taking singing lessons. And so when I was like, Tim is, yes, he's a man, but he's gay and he's my singing teacher, they actually didn't believe me. They were like, if you have a secret boyfriend, you can just tell us. Like, you don't have to make up such a ridiculous excuse. So I got exposed by accident.
Well,
but
and
I still see Tim.
Tim's incredible as, you know, trained Broadway stars, et cetera. But like you even said in some of the toughest times of your job, that was a appointment you never canceled. Yeah. And I think one thing we've talked about on the show, and like when we want to tie people into, is like we are these multifaceted human beings. So this kind of pivots us to our next section, Salt of the Earth, of, you know, in order to do this kind of hard public service work that we all try to do here on these couches, you know, it takes our own feeding of our soul and our building of our light, but also like recognizing other people who are doing really meaningful work. And so the Salt of the Earth section, we have some questions for you, but also want you to think through like organizations or people that you would say, like Tim sounds like he was a salt of the earth in the way that he fed you through music and through creativity. What are the types of organizations and salt of the earth people that you're seeing out doing really meaningful work? We're not into the tense moments of the times we're living in right now. We'll save that for our next section. But in that moment, in the moment we're living in, it really feels wonderful to highlight people who are going above and beyond to make people's lives a little better, you know?
Yeah.
So I think if he has a question to tee up, right?
Oh, sure. First of all, I would love to hear. I have one really quick question. When you think of like your upbringing, I mean, Tim sounds like somebody recently in your, and I don't even know if it's in your professional life, because it was, like you said, it was connected to a profession, but it sounds like it's like a life.
Yeah. I didn't keep going for professional reasons. I kept going because it was giving me something.
Exactly. Curious to know 2 things. The first is any individuals that really just helped you to be who you are today, like, or spaces, right? It could be the why, it could be whatever, but like anything that you feel like without this, I don't know if we would be sitting with the Laura today.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe it sounds too stereotypical, but like it is my grandmother and my parents for some very specific reasons that I will say I would never have understood they would bring me to my job at the fire department. But once I had left there and was reflecting on the journey, and a lot of people saying it was so unusual, it was like I could actually always see it. Once I looked back, I thought about these points in like the sort of upbringing that my parents had and that they either provided for me or I just happened to have based on the way their life worked out, that made me actually like the perfect fit in a lot of ways for the fire department. And in ways like many of them very powerful and positive, but I'd also say some that like are kind of hard lessons. Like some of the things I endured at the fire department that were hard for me were things I realized were sort of generational in my family to endure, especially with women. And so like that made me the perfect fit. Like it made me survive to get to the top. But like those are tough lessons in a lot of ways. Like should women learn so well to endure those things?
Ooh. And I think that leads to like, that's so perfect into second thought that I had, because I knew of you as the first, and there's a lot that comes with the first at times, but I don't know if there's a lot of like spaces where first can either speak to other firsts or first can speak to other people that are positionally really forced to not just do their job, but do their job well, if we're going to be honest, right? I love that you said that, like, hey, I actually think I was perfect for this position. I don't know if everyone feels that way when they're in it. So any thoughts around what advice maybe you wish you had received, or that you know others, especially femfolk, but folks that are, you know, the first for a myriad of reasons, like that you feel like they need to like keep in mind? Because I actually do love that you said, I actually was kind of right for this position. And I wish we said that more, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah, I think one of the things about being a first of any variety is people fundamentally think of you as unusual or odd. And you can feel that way, and you can be made to feel that way. And so I think there's something powerful in reflecting on the ways in which you're different and why that's like important, but also the ways in which you're very much the same. And I'd actually say most of us don't succeed in a culture where we don't have something fundamentally in common, because that's how, like, I think of culture as a language. And so it's like, if you're fluent in it, it's because you spoke it growing up. If you have to learn it, it's fundamentally harder to learn a language. And that's where we see, I think, as cultures grow and try to pull in new people, they actually stumble because not everybody's actually speaking the same language about what's going on there and what the norms are, or they're not in agreement. So I think it's powerful to say, like, when you're made to feel so unusual a lot of times. And I think also what firsts do is they often raise the issue of, are these the qualifications we should have in this job? And so you see that a lot with firsts, especially women, where suddenly people are like, well, is that the kind of person we should have here? I mean, the commissioner is a perfect job. It is largely, it's a civilian job, but it's largely been filled by civilians. So 3/4 of fire commissioners have been civilians with no FDNY experience whatsoever. I had a ton of FDNY experience, and I, like all my other civilian counterparts, had not worn a uniform. But it wasn't until there was a woman in that job that it was like, well, why is this civilian here? And should that be true? And now there's this big conversation about whether or not that's the right fit for the job. And I'm not even going to say that's not the right conversation to be having. But it's interesting. Like, what I've observed is with all firsts, they raise the issue of standards and qualifications. And then people point that ire at them. So I think it's powerful to say, what are all the ways I was a perfect fit here, you know, or what are all the ways I'm just like you or I fit in? Even though it doesn't mean like I didn't feel like I perfectly fit all the time. But it's powerful to like suggest you're not some strange aberration that showed up there just because you look different.
I really quick, I know we're going to get into like way deeper into politics or policy, however you want to look at it. But I appreciate you sharing that as somebody who is always going to represent different things just without speaking, like coming into the room. There is something very understandable, because we've all been socialized to know that like that train is coming, right? The train of like standards, qualifications, and vita checking and all background checking or whatever. And then there's also, you know, I struggle with what it means right now when, number one, we don't necessarily have a shared understanding. When you said language, like we are a culture that doesn't have a shared understanding of what equity is. It doesn't have a shared understanding of what quote unquote DEI is or isn't. And in some ways you almost want to look at it like, you know, DEI or EDI or however you want to put the emphasis on the equity really is just to ensure that everyone in the culture is like participating and involved. And it's not necessarily that. It's not necessarily, just like you said, like, I don't even think that's the wrong question to ask. I also feel like, and I don't think there's anything wrong with asking, why are you asking the question, right? Like, I think that there are these parts, I respect so much about what you're saying and thinking a little bit about my journey and the journey of other people, that some of this is also, where do we interrupt the culture a bit on like, this is the language we've always known, but we need to like evolve. Do we want to evolve? Which is something I question every day, is to like, are we ready to evolve? But like there's so much in my head that's like, I wish more managers and people that are in power hopefully take from that as they're like just determining who's the right person, the right fit, or even just starting from the space of like, maybe this person is unusual, but they're also they're human, you know?
They might be unusual, but they still have things in common, or they're unusual and that's what we need right now. I mean, to get to your point about like the train coming at you, one great advantage I had in coming into my job is I was in the department beforehand and I was watching what was happening to women in firsts. And I went back to school to study it. I found it so strange. that I wanted to wrap my mind around it, because what I saw was people who were accepted and qualified. And as they got closer to the top, they started to be cast as not qualified and then suddenly not accepted, not the right fit. And I really wanted to know what that was. And by studying it, I saw a much wider aperture of like firsts across all kinds of spaces. You know, one story I remember is the first Black tenured math professor, I think at Yale, at one of the Ivies. And so I say that to say, like, it didn't just have to be women in the fire department. I tried to take this wide aperture and say what's happening. And that I never imagined when I was doing that I would be fire commissioner. But what I realized after the fact is a lot of what happened to me that was very shocking, like suddenly like being accepted and being seen as qualified. And then almost the next day, people are questioning who you are and not accepting you. I understood it wasn't about me. And I think for most firsts, they don't have that opportunity. I just had this strange opportunity, both in being there, but also that I didn't think I'd have the job. And so I was studying the job as like an academic exercise. Like, how do we get a female fire commissioner? And what is she going to face? Never thinking it would be me. And I think, I mean, and probably for the best, right? Never thinking it would be me, or I might have been intimidated by the prospect. But what it meant when those things happened, they hurt personally. Don't get me wrong. You're still human. But it meant that I did understand that was going to happen and that it wasn't just about me. And it also has been, I think part of my passion is like getting to other future firsts to tell them that too. So they don't feel so stunned by it or alone in it. Because you do, you would think if you're a good leader, you always want to self-reflect. And I think women are especially self-reflective. We tend to assume we're the problem. That's why that like the Taylor Swift line, I'm the problem, it's me, is so powerful to women. Because men actually are taught to have an ego and be like, it isn't me, it's you. Women are taught to self-blame. And so what happens in the feedback loop is you're like, I'm trying to be a better leader. I'm trying to be a better manager. I'm trying to improve. When there is a sudden like scream that you're not qualified, your instinct isn't to say, screw you. Your instinct is like, am I not qualified? Did I screw up? And so you have to really quickly learn how to manage and let in feedback, but not all the feedback, or it will crush you. And that's hard as a human. That's like a real art. And it's not one you experience until you're like shot into the public lexicon.
Well, this human component, I mean, literally you're seeing into my souls. Like even yesterday, I literally don't have one friend, a female friend who's seriously advanced in their career that doesn't still question what their next step is, how they navigate it, of any background, and we've talked about this is like, there's such additional scrutiny for femfolk, and then layer in different elements of Black femfolk, queer femfolk, et cetera. How did you kind of maintain the human element as you're going into culture change, right? Like obviously there's like organizational culture, there's like the big C culture of the world, music, et cetera. There's like the systematic culture. How did you find ways to shift the culture from within the fire department? And how did you maintain any element of self and human while in there? Because to your point of like not even feeling like you could comfortably go out and see a pop concert, like how did you approach the culture change? What were kind of like the first kind of things that struck you in that period of time? And then when did you find that you kind of needed to hold on to your human element? And how did you approach that?
Yeah, I think sort of going back to what we said about like, why is my family so determinative here? I now can see how the things they gave me, but that they didn't actually try, they did out of necessity, really helped me here. And I think like we would call it found family now, but like back in the day, it was just the necessity of like my grandmother immigrated and didn't know anyone here. And my mom moved from Detroit to California when she was young and didn't know anyone there and couldn't afford to go home. And so for both my mom and grandma, building a tribe of mostly other women who are like family was so inherent. Like I didn't even think of it that way. When my grandmother died and I went down the list of people I had to call, I had to ask my mom who I was related to. It turned out almost no one. I mean, we have a big family, but like of the list, many of them were actually just family friends that were so close to me. I assumed they were family and I feel that way about them. And so I now realize like my tribe of women, which you are in, was one I had been building up for years, and I could not have survived the experience without them, full stop. Not only were they there for like some of the tactical parts, but also like I could go home and I could be in my living room and invite them over and be myself. And I never worried that they were gonna talk to the paper about me. I never worried that they wanted something from me. Like they were family in every sense of the word. And so like I did, while the space got smaller and smaller where I could be myself, it still existed. And what I see in other leaders is they don't get one because you have to build it before, right? The people who want you once you have the big job are not the people who are going to be your friends.
That's true.
That's very true.
And so like I realized how powerful what my mom and grandma taught me was. But again, I realized they didn't know it and I didn't know it. It was necessity and turned out to be necessity for me too. Like I never would have made it without that ability to sometimes be able to come home and let my hair down and be myself and be like all the things, happy, sad, cry, messy, but also just like be, like we would turn on music in my living room and open a bottle of wine and just dance because I couldn't go to concerts and I couldn't really go out. So we had our own, and that was a saving grace. And I don't know if I can answer your question of like, how do you constantly manage that? It's like an everyday management to constantly say like, am I okay? Am I able to still take in feedback, but keep out some of the meanest stuff? And am I able to keep like being a person? Is this getting too hard? But I would say that when I kind of felt the scale was tipping is when I knew it was time to leave. When I kind of felt like I couldn't really be myself at all anymore because it was just becoming too hard. And I could see like hopefully if you care about this as a practice, you're watching other leaders and even when they fail and they stumble, you're trying to learn from them.
Yeah.
So you're looking around saying like, why do other leaders who were good people make these mistakes or are good people make these mistakes? And I think that's one of them is sometimes you just keep pushing and you just don't realize like, at what point have I sacrificed so much? I've lost like my, I can't tell like heads and tails of where I am or what decision I'm making anymore.
It reminds me of sometimes when I'm either helping other organizations or like coaching other women leaders, I sometimes ask them like, what's on the other side of this ladder? Because oftentimes the ladders aren't built by us, but we're on it. And so when you're at the top and it does become that like day-to-day management, and then it's like, okay, so then what's after that? And then it's like, it can either, you hope that they see it as like a blue sky moment, but the reality is there are some realities, like institutions have not only norms, but it's like, can I really build in this space? Or when do I get to be me, whatever that concept of me is in that space. And to be clear, like you can still be authentic in different spaces and not necessarily show everything about yourself, right? There are ways to be authentic in different spaces. But I do think that sometimes we are afraid when we are in leadership to say, this is actually too hard, not because the job is hard, but to be me. Like I am sacrificing being me. And I just want to raise, that's like a high emotional IQ to be able to say like, especially where standards don't allow us to say things like, oh, this is actually too much for me. We see a lot of people stumble and crumble internally because it's like they take on more and don't recognize how much is being sacrificed in the moment. And I just appreciate that you said that, like, no, I got to that point where it's like, I don't know if that's worth it for this job or this space.
And then, you talk a lot about burnout and like millennial burnout, which we're all on the front of. I always kind of understood burnout as like, you run into a wall and then the wall stops you. You're like, oh, I've hit burnout. But I heard it described maybe a year or two ago about like burnout is when you just keep on running through the wall and you're just kind of like dragging the wall along with you. And you like, and I think for, communities that we inhabit, different ones here, but like when you're a fish out of water, perceived in that whatever that water is, even though to your point, you're probably a perfect fish for that water. But when the water is not inviting, it's really hard to like, when you're already exhausted from an incredibly high pressure job. I mean, let's be real about the actual like job description about being the FDNY commissioner for the city of New York. I mean, I literally have been at birthday parties with you where you had to leave, go change, do a press conference because there was a blackout, or like your time is not your own. And so dealing with that burnout and then also dealing with a job you have to keep on going and then having to constantly defend your identity. We talk a lot about like of just showing up in that space as a woman, as a scholar, as an attractive woman, as a woman who also likes to go to a rock concert. Like you can carry those truths and not be a robot in these jobs, What it makes me think is like you can become a zombie. And I actually think that anybody who's
already gotten to a high level has learned that skill, which is to suppress a lot of themselves. And so you have to be really careful, because I think to your point, like most people would say, like, I would never burn out. And I think they're right, as in I would be a zombie. I'd keep walking, but I wouldn't be there anymore. Like, we have to be real about if that's worth it, you know, because I think we sometimes up the ladder pride ourselves, especially in just like, I can work more than the next person. And that's how you get there. I can work longer hours. I can work harder. But then you get to a point where you're like, one, you actually just can't, there aren't any more hours in the day. But also what you actually need to do the job well is to show up 100%, not to work more hours. You need to show up with like your full functioning person. And you often can show up as a zombie, I think, as in you look like you're there and you sound like you're there because you've trained your body so well to do the job through that many hours of work. It doesn't mean you're actually in it. And I think it is actually a really dangerous thing. And I think that's what, and I was saying, like, some of the things I've learned from my family can be dangerous. Like, I realize that I have an extraordinary, immense ability to compartmentalize, and to say it's an ability is actually misleading. Like, I just do it. My friends actually, it's so common now. My friends describe it as it's like a slow, watching an accident happen slowly in front of them because something horrific is happening. And I'm just like, it's fine. And I will not even realize, in some cases, if I'm lucky, days or weeks later. But in this case, there's stuff I'm processing about my job that I'm only now realizing a year later was like really bad and I should have reacted to. And that is a upbringing. Like that is generational trauma that I've been taught to be very good at not saying anything about being assaulted, offended, bothered, uncomfortable. And a result of that is like, I fit right in a place that values that. But the result is like, it can kill you, you know? And it means things can happen to you that you turn around and you're like, why did I not say something about that? And what does that mean? Like, if people think of me as strong, and in a way I'm strong because I endured it, but like, is it really strong not to have said something when something horrific was happening? Like, I question the value of that strength. Maybe I'll say, even though I'm acutely aware, I do not get the job without that trait. And I do not survive the job without that trait. But it's not like I woke up and trained and asked for it. And like, if you said, if I had a daughter, I wanted her to have it, I'd say no. You know, I want her to say when something's wrong.
Yeah. Well, it goes to our next section, flipping the table, is where we get into the real meat. Because even what I'm hearing from you right now, Laura, is it's so indicative. Like, even the questions you're asking of like, was I being strong? It goes back to our earlier conversation about like how women so frequently second guess the decisions that they have to make in situations that are incredibly difficult. I want to pivot a little bit to about like, talk about situations that are incredibly difficult. Right now, the assault on women being able to hold serious leadership positions, being kind of questioned about like in the manosphere of how we show up. Obviously, there's microcosms and smaller sections of culture where this is more prominent than others. In this moment in time, like, how do you see the strength coming in for women to advocate for themselves, for women to step into the first? Like, and I really was appreciating what you were saying about first, because, you know, Iffy and I, one of the reasons we are called Carpenter's daughter is because we love the concept of building and seeing where things are missing in spaces. And so you're like, okay, I guess we have to build it if no one's building it. And that was a lot of the way I've seen you approach your career as well. And so I guess, what are your observations right now of just like how we encourage women in a time where there's just so many assaults on, just by virtue of you standing in the room as the first female FDNY commissioner? It's an act of rebellion. It's an act of protest. And a lot of people perceive their own kind of worldview of like what that means for you to even be in those spaces.
People will cast their own feelings about what's going
projections
on.
Are real.
Yeah. A couple of things, lots of things that make me want to flip the tables these days. Probably, I'm not alone in that. But I'll try to stick the ones that I think are unique to my journey into an all-male space, because I do think I learned a tremendous amount about male culture, right? And how it, like, I would say a lot of what's happening now with the manosphere, it surprises me 0%.
You are actually,
we have no tea here, just liquor eyes. But
well, it's funny because I think people think of me as an expert at being a woman, but I actually think what it is in a place where there are no other women, for the most part, is like 161 female firefighters
out of 17,000.
And I should say, shout out to the civilian and EMS women. There are a lot more of them, but like, you're operating fundamentally the world's largest fire service, and like the iconography is that. And also, the men you work with, the men who are on your team, come from the fire operations ranks. So like, you are fundamentally kind of the only woman in most rooms. And it's interesting because I actually think I don't know as much about being a woman. I know about men because it is all male and it is traditionally male. Like they are alpha males, right? So like when I hear people talking about the manosphere as though that's like something that erupted and it's bizarre, I'm like, I could have told you what the manosphere was like 10 years ago because I was watching it firsthand. And that teaches me a lot about what they're good at, what they value, but also what women are up against if we're trying to change the world as they see it. Because I am seeing it in their pure form and it's really interesting and sometimes lovely. It's not all bad. But I think a couple of things that like make me want to flip a table, and I think I'll touch on what you said, is like nothing is more powerful to me as an organizing principle than building community. It's easy for me to say that now, having been a community organizer, but that started way before I was that, right? It starts in the fact that I come from a family that is religious, is tight-knit, is large, and that always built that community out of necessity themselves. And I can see that now. And it's certainly why I went into the business of community organizing and the fire department, which is fundamentally a community-centric place.
Yeah.
And what I notice about women is that they're totally alone in these spaces. And they're totally alone and people don't even realize it. Like the men around them don't clock. Like what would it feel like if I was alone in this job, right? And loneliness, I don't just mean like physically there's 1 of 10 that are a woman. I mean loneliness like when the women walk down the street in their uniform, people do not thank them for their service for the most part. For the most part, they're like, did you earn that job? Did you get here the same way men did? Is something like wrong with you? Like you're not very feminine. Why do you look like that? Whereas when the men walk down the street, they get this like, you're a hero. And when I see you in uniform, I think you're strong. I think you're tough. And so it's lonely in lots of ways for the women. It's not just that it's lonely like by the numbers. It's lonely because their experience is fundamentally different. But if they say that it's different, that gets them the wrong sort of heat. If they say it's the same, they're kind of denying a part of their personality, or that gets them the wrong kind of heat from women who say, I know it's not the same and you should tell me. And I think what I'd also say, and this is a call out to our liberal friends, I felt this way too, and I know a lot of female firefighters and women in the military who feel this way, because it's a traditionally conservative space, it also feels like all the women who are out there talking about how great it is to put women in spaces disappear when you get the job because they're fundamentally either not in your community or they're not comfortable dabbling in it. And so like to me, it did not feel like girl power when I got the job. It felt like I am a woman in a place where that's weird and where I need to fit in with the men as best as I can and like not make them mad, basically. I made them mad, so I failed at them. I couldn't not make them mad, but I think it's like a note for all of us. And I think my organizing principle after leaving is like to go find the women and make sure they know they're not alone. And like, I think that's women in all kinds of spaces, but my focus is first, I think, on women in traditionally male spaces, because I think that unbeknownst to, like, none of us realize that's what's happening. We've sort of divided the way society has. And that means even like women, like we started that way with you saying that people are so divided now. Women who decide to go down a road that is maybe not the traditional one, certainly not traditional liberal spaces, but just as one people don't understand, it's like opaque, they feel completely alone in that world. And I think they often feel like any way that they stick their head up and say they're out there as a woman will get them the wrong kind of attention internally. But then they also get criticized by women who like don't see them out there being part of kind of like the larger movement. And I think that's like something to really know. I'd also say just something to like note about male culture. They are extremely supportive of one another when it involves power. They can hate one another, but like when they fundamentally understand that their fates are tied, they in lockstep.
Yeah, they lock.
And so seeing those two comparisons, like how alone the women feel and how kind of like divided by like the type of women and being compared to other women and debating if they're the right kind of woman. Not even saying those aren't conversations I've had or that I don't think can be valuable. I've learned, it's like I'm pulling out the aperture and I've learned that they fundamentally tend to just degrade women and they benefit men because men understand those rules and are out there like helping one another no matter what kind of man they are. And it's really, I think it's sort of changed my worldview, which is like, I am going to fight for women to be first and be more everywhere. And once they are, we can talk about whether or not we have differences of opinion, but like, I'm going to fight the way the men fight, which is like more of us everywhere in power all the time and not let them feel so alone in that. And I think that's kind of a hard thing to say. That's not in my old feminist circles. I think that would not be a very popular thing to say, but it's very much shaped and changed by my experience in like a really, really male place. with a ton of downward pressure on the women there.
Yeah.
See, I've silenced you.
No,
I told you it's a hard thing to say.
No, actually, it's really making me think, because I just feel like in general, like talking about the spaces where it's already a lonely journey. And I will say, in my own progressive leaning, so often certain professions are written off as that must be a certain political ideology as well. And so in these conversations, there's a lot of assumptions made about someone's decision to go into whatever role it would be. And I think particularly in progressive spaces, like when there's uniforms involved, there's a lot of questions about that. And so you're really giving me food for thought. And I'm thinking, I was kind of like going down the creative journey with the female firefighter who has to kind of fight a battle on several fronts in order to do a job that is helping protect our lives in a way. And so, it's an incredible food for thought.
Yeah. I mean, there's like three different parts of the table that I want to break off. So I'm breaking off one leg. I'm recognizing how, for me, as somebody who definitely identifies with feminist culture, but also like Black feminist culture within a community where, even when I think about like Black service people in uniform, how there's like a different level of like actual like respect for Black femme service people, because we are very aware of like what it is that they do have to endure. The way, I think you're absolutely right, like the way they get questioned in any uniform, even as like, you know, your postal service worker, right? Like the things that they have to go through, and the ways that community does, you know, at least try to do to like, hope you have a good day, or check in on them, because you know that everything that you stated is also what they are predominantly getting questioned on, if they're even spoken to at all, right? So there's that part of what I was just thinking of, visualizing the ways that I do greet people on purpose, because I'm acutely aware of that. But I also don't want to romanticize that in spaces that are on the margins, like that dominant culture of, in some ways, how you have to even more so represent, you know, regardless of race, like that, like there is this, and sometimes depending on the region, Black and Latino officers in their training were actually more trigger ready. And when spoken to in anonymous conversations, a lot of them were just like, I just want to make sure that I do my job like everyone else. So it was this pressure to also adhere to a certain, whether it's in, I don't want to say it's just an assumption. I think it's deeper than that. There's this understanding that there's a certain form of masculinity or a certain form of maleness that just comes with the job. And I think about what that means as a femme person now in that space. Like you said, like not wanting to rock the boat, not wanting to say something is wrong, or even like there's a better way that we all could do our job. It's like, but what happens after I say that? What happens on the other side of that? So that's also going through my mind. And then my own personal experience, when I worked for the city, I worked for the city in a space that has like men in the name. I worked for the Young Men's Initiative. And a lot of, you know, I came into that space as like a social scientist and an attorney and somebody that was like very much in, you know, directly coming from cases of young unarmed people being, you know, shot, most of them men, most of them boys. But when I would
watch
enter,
NYC Men Teach.
Well, but that, I mean, it's part of the job. But I think that, to be honest, even with that, I think that in spaces where, and I want to give you credit, even if you don't share those things, I don't think you were somebody that just went into the space and just went rank and file. I think there are things that we bring into the space, whether we announce it or not, that may not even be about aiming to change the full culture, but you're just doing your job. And like you said, you're doing your job 100%. And so for me to do my job 100% also meant that when I'm in these spaces with amazing community activists and leaders in our community that are all men, and I'm saying to them like, okay, if we care about these young boys, how are their mothers? And then get these stares like, what are you doing? And why are you raising that? And in my head, I'm just thinking of the statistic that in New York City, the majority of young people are raised in matriarch leaning homes. So we've got to care. If we care about the boy, we got to care about the mother. It's very interesting how far we still need to go. When it comes into like doing the job well. Forget like the standards and the norms. It's almost like the culture wants to hold more to the culture versus like to the evolution of what it could be. Like, I don't necessarily care if you want to be machismo or whatever. Are we just doing the job well? And we doing it? And sometimes it feels like there's an affront when a woman is calling for not even more focus on women and girls, just a focus on, can we do this job to its optimal space? I feel like we're, whether you're looking at the November elections period or even right now in politics, I feel like I don't know, I don't want to say we've regressed too far, because I want to shout out the like Tish James of the world and the Fannie Willises of the world. Like, there are definitely women that are like, you don't intimidate me. But the reality is a lot of women are also out of work, and a lot of people are not
being pushed out of work.
Not feeling like they're feeling like I have to be more of whatever the culture is to not get in, not to lose my social security. So there's a lot about the table that resonated when you were speaking. It'd be interesting to hear what you think we can do in this moment, unless it's really just about sustaining. And to be honest, that has been a lot of the conversation that I've had in a lot of, at least workspaces. It's like, is our job right now just to kind of be and lay low for a bit? And figure out what the next movement
can we
is?
push? Can we change?
Can we push? Can we do it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if you have thoughts about that.
I think many things about what you said. I have like so much. I'm going to try and keep it short. I think like there's this really important question we just all need to realize is being asked. And by not realizing it, we're kind of tripping ourselves up, which is like, we often don't know if we're asking to change the way the leader looks, but have them keep like driving the boat in the same direction, the same way we've always done it, or are we asking the place to change? And we often like, we don't know, but often like what's happening is something's being bandied about politically. And so everybody thinks they know like their own interpretation of what's out there, or even a mayor or a president, they have a sense of what they want to change. It doesn't mean that's what your commissioner or your staff realizes. But the practical effect of that is actually, and this is shown through the literature, is we tend to bring in first when we think we want organizational change. So like organizations in crisis tend to bring in a first, but what that means for that person, including myself, is you're being asked to change the way leadership looks and the way the job is being done and the organization is run, which is a double whammy. Right. And then fundamentally that change is blamed on the person's identity. It's because she's a woman that she pushed so hard, or that she screwed it up, or that she made us go through this. And I think we need to like reconcile that. I don't have the answer. I just know that if we thought that's what we were asking for, we might think differently about who we asked to do it. We might think differently about signing up to do it. And I think it's a really important thing we don't tackle a lot. And I actually think there's this really powerful piece often about being a woman that like we are bringing to the table, but we often don't know it. And maybe we're not even being asked. And it's what you said, which is like, like you cannot abide by a certain amount of cruelty happening in front of me. So I don't care what you ask me to do with the job. If you are being cruel, even if it is my head that will roll, I will say something. And there are many, many organizations where that is an affront. It has never been said. It doesn't matter that it's wrong, that it's inefficient, but nobody's ever said it. And saying it makes you the bad guy. I cannot stop thinking about this episode of the morning show I watched on the plane. And I will tell you why. It's Greta Lee having this internal monologue after she's fired about what she says is, I so desperately wanted this place to be nicer and kinder and not so cruel. And I'm starting to think that no one else wanted that. That isn't what they asked me to do. They asked me to do the job like a man has always done it. And make heads roll and smash skulls in to get value for the shareholders. And like, was I naive to think that anyone was asking me to make the culture? I am like emotionally ruined by this monologue. It's not even real. And I can't stop thinking about it because I think like that's my mistake too. And when I say mistake, it's like I couldn't do it any other way. I would have left before I didn't say anything. But that fundamentally, really, no one was asking for that. And they don't appreciate that I started saying it. And I'm so floored by that, maybe being like a distinctly gendered thing, that women are taught to worry how people are treated.
Yep.
And so we not only can't not worry about it, we are showing up at a job thinking that's what's important, because it is important in our lives. Like, if we're friends and I don't worry how you're treated, we're not friends anymore. And I'm not saying men aren't nice, but I will say, from watching male culture, that isn't like making one another feel okay is not the basis of their friendship, right? It is the basis for women. Fundamentally, it is our job to make everyone feel okay all the time.
And to keep the family together, keep the crew together. Laura, I mean, I can just plus one to like everything you said there. You know, Iffy wrote a book called The Equity Mindset that she asked me to be a contributor on, which I was very honored. And we had this conversation. It was the height of COVID, post George Floyd, and we were kind of talking about, for those who remember that era a couple of years ago, there was a real push from like corporations to hire more women, to hire more Black women, to put people in real leadership positions. And I don't know, I guess I was feeling skeptical in our conversation about like, yes, hire the incredible Black women in this country that have more credentials than any of us going into jobs. But if you're going to put them in those positions, how are you changing the culture around that position to let that person thrive? And, you know, I see this pattern just happening repeatedly. I saw it definitely happen with you, of like, you're throwing someone into, you know, a situation where a fire directly into the deep end. Exactly.
Sorry, I said it was
into the burning building with like no hose, you know? And
but you also want them to build the hose.
But you want them to build the hose. You want them to like reconfigure the hose with like AI. I don't know what you're doing with the hose, but like, so, like, you know what I'm saying? And like, I saw firsthand this kind of incredible task that you were given. And I think this happens to women in every space, whether you're the main leader or you're asked to go in and like, you know, I used to say the same thing about when you're hiring an equity person or a DEI person for your team, is that person who's leading your DEI, you're often hiring a woman of color to take it. And then you're saying, fix the whole culture of the organization, but it's going to be this kind of like off in the side office.
Basically, do it nicely.
Do
Fix
it
the
nicely.
Culture, but don't make anybody mad.
Civility policy.
In 10 days and erase 400 years.
Yeah.
And if you don't, it's on your performance review, and there's that. Like,
and will be incorporated into the leadership of the organization. Like, is it a, you know, if you're doing, we've all worked on like citywide initiatives, right? And we talk about how it needs to be a citywide effort to get universal pre-K done, or to get NYC Men Teach. You need multiple city agencies to work on this. If the whole organization is not trying to change because they're not making it a directive across the board, it has to be actually a cultural ethos that everyone is adopting. And then we ask women to put themselves in real harm's way. We literally just had a mayoral election here where someone who has been repeatedly accused of sexually harassing women was propped up by many people in power to even run, you know,
that
and so
will make me flip the table.
Yeah, it makes you want to flip the table, because you're like, what's even going on here, you know?
Yeah, can I say two things I think are really important? One is that, and this goes back to like, you've asked many questions about how do you move people, how do you think about culture and community, and I think this is really important. I think it explains why I'm so obsessed about just tackling the structures and like being less critical of the people in them. I think it's not that like you started talking about the officers you worked with. We've all worked with another woman, let's say, who's meaner than the men around us, right? Like we can all think of that woman and be like, so how am I supposed to embrace her? Is I think what you're saying to me. And I think just what I realized, it's like I'm as hurt by that, right? And she lives rent-free in my head. But what I realized is like it is the structures that are recreating the problem, and they will keep recreating it. Like I used to talk about how in a culture as strong and large as FDNY, that if you get rid of a bad actor, it's like a Hydra, as in like if you cut off the head of the snake, to grow back. A new guy who acts just like that because the culture has produced him. It was not him. And the guy who's mad that he fired the last guy. And that is true in every role that I have experienced in a large organization, that when you try to move that person on, you get a new person because it is the culture, not the people. And so like, I think I've just become radicalized. Not that I don't dislike people who act a certain way in an office, and I could name people who are bad actors in many ways. It's just that without fixing the culture, they will just keep being made that way. And so like, I've just sort of felt like, don't put my energy on the people, and like critiquing the people gets you nowhere. It's changing the place, and it's much harder. And it's the conversation I think we have to elicit. Like, I think the mistake we make is we often debate the people we don't like, and not the place that makes them that way. And so we feel like we've achieved something when we move them on, and then we wonder why nothing changes. So I think I've just been really radicalized of like, it isn't the people. Like, it's not that people don't act in a way I don't approve of. But unless we take all of our energy and point it at the place and make the place change, and frankly, elicit the conversation, do people really want this to change?
Yeah.
Because what I find a lot is when you dig down and you say, like, we're getting rid of iffy, they're like, okay, then we're good. Stop pushing, you know? And so what I've realized is, one, you really want to get out of people. Like, do they really want the culture to change? Like, let's have that fight and try to win that fight. Otherwise, we're not doing anything. If we just think we're getting rid of people because like she annoys me today, or he's a bad actor, we will land ourselves right back in the same place. And so I think that's like, it's just so important. Like, people are fundamentally human, and they are making human choices, just like the example you gave. Like, certain people are being so crushed by the culture that they are making choices that maybe they don't even want to. And you can realize that when you talk to them, but you can also realize that they're not going to make different ones unless we change the culture that they're in.
Yeah. And I'm going to push a little bit and say that, and I think there's a way to look at it as both, right? Because one of the things that I found very difficult in, you know, there was a time when everyone was talking about implicit bias. You okay?
Sorry, I'm having a little asthma attack.
LaCroix is not going to do anything to help that, right? LaCroix.
I have a little sip.
Okay. Yeah,
don't put the video on me first.
Let's get LaCroix. Yeah. Let's all have some LaCroix. It's not just you. Okay.
Wow. It's going down my...
Everybody's really struggling with
today.
I did it on purpose. I wanted to slurp so that we could...
Solidarity with me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And only quickly, like, I feel like sometimes when implicit bias and or the conversation around structures happen, it also has people remove themselves and their actions from how they uphold it. So it's really helpful to really, especially with those in power, oftentimes we're not always talking about, we also treat like the masses of organizations as the same as people in power. And I'm like, we can't really do that. Like, it's not the same, which is why, to add on to the pile of all the things that Alexis had raised as to like how DEI is often treated in organizations. Also, what ends up happening is that leadership doesn't participate. They feel like they're doing like a Taco Tuesday for everybody. And then they like
it's a box checking exercise. Right? Like, we hired a woman, we hired a Black woman. We're good now, right?
Leadership did their thing. And now they're
we have
like,
a social impact program. You're like, what percentage of your budget is it?
Exactly. You know? And I think that like, at least with my team at Pink Cornrows, like we always started with leadership first. Like, we were like, we're not even going to deal with everyone else, to your point, because people are trying to work, get paid, not rock the boat for the most part. And they're also doing what they think their managers want them to do and what the culture is at that space. So who controls the culture, right? Like, systems aren't just systems. Our history isn't just history. They're created by people who made choices. And so I do think it's important for us to talk about like, who are the individuals that, you know, today, December 18th or whatever day it is, that are creating a hard time. But I love what you raised about like, let's not have that conversation in a vacuum and not recognize that by getting rid of this person, you are, you may actually, first of all, there are people that loved them. There are people that want to be them. They're still there. And like, really thinking holistically about how you move culture and how, you know, to respect those that are the ones that have been asked to be the strategists put under this umbrella of DEI, like really respecting what it actually means for somebody to shift that culture and that they're not going to shift all of it probably in their tenure at that space. Right. So I love that you're actually calling for like, let's bring in the right type of information, stats, data, but let's stop acting like, you know, let's stop acting like the research isn't there. And I appreciate it in this conversation that you did this job, not going into it from a space of like, whoa, I'm the first and look at all the things, but like also coming to it from a space of like, let me respect not just this space, but the space of just labor and the space of like data and behavior. And let me kind of get a sense of like what it would mean for a first, even though you didn't know you were going to be that first, which is, I think, actually really cool to be researching yourself ahead of time. But then also post that, like getting to the space of like, my space right now is actually like culture shifting, not just people shifting, but like how do you actually shift systems? And so as we close or as we wrap, we like to end with like this, like, do this in remembrance. If you haven't noticed any of the,
thematic,
little themes of that come across with like traditional church spaces, but it's our fun twist on this. But how would you then want folks to, first of all, I'm going to ask you, how would you like folks to remember your legacy? Because it's yours.
Yes.
We don't got to wait for an obituary, which is very far from now. But like, how would you like folks to remember your legacy? But even as you feel like we're all walking away from this space, what is it that comes to you? And it doesn't have to be you. It could be a person. It could be a quote. It could be a musician that you feel like you would want folks to maybe tap into when they're looking to have like faith or hope in something, right? Because we don't want to just leave with the problems, but what also inspires us to move forward. Obviously for us, we like this dude named Jesus, is just out there doing his thing. But like, it don't got to be Jesus. It could be, whatever you want it to be. So legacy first.
So much I want to say to what you just said. Okay, legacy first. I mean, I think the thing I most want people to know is like, I don't expect them to have agreed with me, and I don't expect that I did everything right. And it's interesting. One thing you'll notice in this space, especially as a first, people are projecting that you are saying, I have it all figured out and you're doing everything wrong, even though you never say it. And I don't feel it at all.
Projection, yeah.
But it's interesting because like a lot of what I would get is like, well, she's not perfect or she's not the perfect leader. So like, how can she tell us to be better? And I was like, no, I'm starting with like, I'm not the perfect leader. No one's perfect. I have flaws. We should all be better. Like I wasn't pointing fingers. And so it's interesting. I feel the need to say that because it was such a strong reaction to a thing I never said or did and don't feel. But also I think the thing I have struggled most with is the idea that I was not fundamentally very qualified and a great fit for the job. That's still the thing that like irks me to this day. I would totally agree that like I am a bit of a stove toucher. I do have a problem not telling people to knock it off.
Fire.
I know.
It comes out.
Fire as the fire.
There were signs early in my life I might end up in this job now that I really think about it. Like I like adrenaline. Frankly, I like large, loud, aggressive men. That is who I've dated. That is what every man in my family looks like.
We should get a drink.
Yeah, we should get a drink. I know them, right? For better or worse, I know how to survive their blows and I know how to like have a good time with them. And so I have struggled since I left. Like so many things I've let go of or worked through or said like, oh, that was my mistake or whatever. That was the path I was meant to be on. But that one still kind of irks me is like when people are like, oh, she wasn't from here. Or she didn't seem like one of us or she just showed up to become commissioner. And I'm just sitting there thinking like,
wow.
I am more like you than you are. And I speak your language fluently. And I was meant to be here. And I'm really good at the job. Like, I wouldn't go do the job again ever because I don't think I was great at the public facing part. And I think it took its toll. But like, if you told me I need to run the department, I could do it in my sleep. I could do it right now. And that's still like, you can hear it. Or like, it's maybe the only thing I'm still a little defensive about. And I think maybe because it bothers me, maybe what I worry about is like, did I ruin it for other women? Like if I had just been like for 8 years, I was completely what they wanted me to be. I was well behaved. I never spoke up. I worked harder than them. I got things to make them happy. I got money. I got legislation. And so to see the way I was cast when I decided to change that is like really informative for me, I think, where I do worry like maybe it was better when I shut up. Like maybe it was better when I assimilated more because then they saw it. Like before I became commissioner, it was very much like, she's okay. She's a lady, but she's okay. Because like she does the work and she doesn't complain about us and she never says that anything's wrong. And like she's, unbeknownst to them, actually changed parts of herself to highlight the parts of herself that are similar to us and downplayed. Like she isn't going to Wu-Tang concerts. She's going to church on Sunday. Those are both parts of me, but some of them fit better in that culture than others. And so I think maybe that's the part of why I fight for me being qualified is like, I worry that I ruined it for other women by being a troublemaker. That like fundamentally, they're like, either this is why women can't lead or they're going to want the woman and embrace the woman who does it all their way, And I struggle with that. I'm not going to lie. I think I made it harder for other women.
No, that's so macro.
No, she gonna have to come back because there's another out. There's some other stuff. Okay, the faith, hope part. Even listening to that, and yet you still have faith and you still have hope in something.
Oh man, guys, I'm relentlessly optimistic. This might be a personality flaw, but it is true. Like I am relentlessly optimistic. Like I go to bed at night excited to get up in the morning. Like when I fall asleep, I'm like, I can't wait till I can wake up and get coffee and see my friends.
Laura is a morning person. That's our one dispute as friends.
I'm also a nighttime person. I think I just
an all-time person. That's all-time person.
But like, I will say, I don't totally know where I get that from. I mean, I think my parents are that way, but like, I don't know where they get it from. It's not like life has given us all the reasons for it to have that, but I definitely have it. And maybe I would say like the community they've built helps that. Like everything is possible together. Nothing is really possible alone. So I think I still have it for whatever reason. Like I do have that optimism. And I mean, I think having like, I do have religious faith, but I think I also have kind of a larger, like to me, religion is almost a reflection of my beliefs about community, not the origin of it. Like religion makes sense to me because it's an organizing principle for like supporting other people. I don't have a particular like religion that I feel an adherence to. Like my parents are Catholic. I was not raised Catholic. I don't go to a Catholic church. I go to a Reformed church when I go. But I also grew up with friends of other religions and felt comfortable in those spaces. And I think that's because religion for me has never been like this church. It's been the concept of community and like rules by which we, like what do we owe one another is something that really appeals to me. So I think that's why I have so much faith is I like have that community. And like I do, I go to church and that is a form of faith. But like, you know, I also like go to concerts and like that is church. Let's be real. Like going to a place where you can feel community with other people and feel revived. And going to your last question about what moves me is I think what I see in women who are performing these days is they are on like the frontier of being women in the world. And by that, they are singing about their rawest feelings that I think like in culture are generally not embraced by women. Like we think about strength as admirable, but we don't think about all of the emotions as being admirable and the ability to put them out there as like quite brave. And so like what I see in women is like, they're powerful. Like most of them are millionaires or billionaires. So they're being powerful in the world and you're like seeing writ large how that's reflected back on them. But they're also making art that is very much about being a woman. Yeah. Like how brave is it to talk about your breakups writ large in the world and be respected for it and to do it well and to do it raw enough that other people see themselves in you. So I think like it really is church for me. Like it's not just that I love music, but I do. I think that they are doing something that's like, it matters a lot. Like if I could do that, and I'm still like struggling to find my own voice, but if I could do that, where like talking about what I went through in a raw enough way helped some other woman get up the next morning and do it. Like I can't think of anything more powerful.
I think you're doing
so like
it.
props to our pop girlies.
I mean, I've been working on projects recently and someone knew you're my friend and they were just like, she's my hero. Like, you know, I think you never know what
I was gonna say that earlier.
Yeah, you never know what life you're impacting, particularly when you're going through such an intense personal journey to be that leader, to be that change maker. We talk about this a lot. There's not a lot of flowers for people who really want to disrupt in the time that they're doing this disruption.
Not in real time.
Not in real time.
Yeah, and we forget that. I think it's like such an important thing to learn in this life that like when we look back, it seems obvious that people's decisions in the realm of like civil rights and women's liberation were right. We have to remember that nobody thought it was right at the time for the most part.
That's
like
right.
Overwhelmingly, nobody thought it was
even
right.
within their own community.
Yeah, like, because I was going to say, even the people who thought it was right in concept thought they were pushing too hard and doing too much and that it was too controversial. And so I find that is like such a lesson to take away and was guiding to me that like, if I was making everyone happy, I was not pushing hard enough. And I think we've got to remember that because it's too easy for us to like very much laud up some trailblazers as like having been the right person. Like you could find 100 white people on the street that'd be like, MLK. I mean, obviously what he was fighting was good. I'm saying that and like you're nodding. But the reality is like, they really will say that not realizing that nobody thought that at the time. Right. And like, we have to, I think like, there's a weird way in which that revisionist history of putting people on pedestals is not helping us. It's making us think you should do it if everyone wants you to. But nobody who's pushed the envelope has done anything anybody wanted them to. What they had was like a deep faith and also like human contact to know they were making, like you have to have some feedback loop, right? They knew they were making someone's life better, but they were not getting positive like public feedback. They were very much getting people either saying that's wrong or I want you to do it, but like slower and nicer. And like
go back to that niceties. Laura, I am, we've been friends for a long time, but honestly, there's been so many new nuggets of wisdom here today. Every time I'm around you, I'm really always just blown away by your true like grounding and humility and care for others and long picture vision where you recognize that not all the fruits of this life are going to be realized in this life, but like the things that you are planting will have so many effects for years to come. And so, just as your friend, I hope this next chapter is fuller than ever for you. Personally, I hope you get to have all of the like, love and culture and art and music you want. I can't wait
Someone invite me to concerts.
Yeah, exactly.
Shout that out on this pod.
Yeah, shout out. You want to invite former FDNY commissioner to concerts. But yeah, I hope this is a really fruitful period in your own life, but I hope that you do continue to use your incredible platform and tenacity to inspire a next group of women to be bolder, to take those risks, and also to push on the structures that ultimately are hurting all of us if it doesn't create an inclusive space. Including the men, exactly.
Not good for any of us.
Exactly. We want everyone to be able to have a life that they love and want to live.
Yeah. Can I maybe say one last thing for ladies who are listening? I think this is a really important part about like following your gut. I think we as women have really good guts, and I think we have to develop them because we are often in danger throughout our lives, but in the early parts of our life, you develop a gut in order to know when to get yourself out of a date, when to get yourself out of a bar, when to walk faster when you're walking home alone. And that is not a complaint. That is just a reality of being a woman that I really have observed in my life, that women just have a much stronger gut. And we really, really should listen to it. And we should like recognize that. To me, it's almost like a superpower of like, we may not come in with some of the experience of our male counterparts, but we come in with a much better sense of like what needs to happen, who we are, what we're capable of, and even like how to get out of a particular, like when to leave. Like, I don't think a man in a lot of these jobs know when, like when we talked about this as though it was gender neutral, like people should know when to leave. I can't think of a woman who didn't leave when she should have, but I can think of lots of men who didn't leave jobs when they should have. Right. It's gendered because women are following their gut, I think.
Their lived experience.
In a way that men are sort of taught to like just power through, you know?
Yeah.
And so I just like really want people to like know that and remember it. And like as women to like maybe find comfort in that and try to get even closer to it. Like how often do we ignore it, right? And end up regretting it because we know our gut is good and we know it like puts us in safe places. And like my gut at this point has kept telling me to push harder and be more emotionally raw and share my story more. And that is very hard for me, I'll admit. But it's interesting because I find so many men to be like, well, that's weird. I mean, obviously you're going to go get another big job. Like that's what people do. And I'm like, this is calling to me that this is like necessary. Yeah. And I'm confident in it because I am a woman. I trust my gut. But it's interesting how much people find that odd, I think, when you're following your gut and it's in a different direction. Like when, again, leadership, even post-leadership doesn't look the same. But just want to like really call out the ladies and like listening to our guts. I think they're our superpower.
No, that's really heavy. And like the calling piece of it, we talk about, you know, in the spiritual spaces, like when something is a calling versus a job even. And it really does feel like this is your calling, Laura, to be on this journey.
I was actually going to say something completely different, to say like, I'm seeing how, first of all, everyone may not be seeing you. So I just want to say like, I really respect the journeying, even in this moment of like how difficult it is to even articulate with words. It's not like these aren't thoughts that are in your mind, but to say it, like your eyes have gotten teary a couple times. I hear the shaking in your voice. And so like, but thank God again for Tim, is that his name? Like, you're, because when you think of like, whether it's our diaphragm or our chakra or that part in us that really works hard to like feel fear, but also protect us. Yep. I actually want to say that I do think that this is part of your journey if it is part of your calling, I just wish you the most like both protection and whatever space that is not visible. I know that's a weird thing to say to a woman, but like whatever space is actually a safe space for you to recharge, because this is not a part of you that is going to be erased. It's a huge, your cross is big. It's a big one. We hope you're not the last one, but we know that even in other cities, there's still firsts in that space. So there's so much wisdom that is on you that in some ways it's, wow, I'm sitting with someone that I knew in a peer space, but I don't even think as femfolk, we necessarily even have the time, to be honest with you, in real time to really think about like what another sister or what another woman is like holding at that moment. Now sitting here, I'm like in awe, like we were all going through similar things at the same time. There really isn't a space, but I'm like, there should be like a first chicks club or something of City Hall, like just something. And I will shout out that like some of us actually, I do remember there was like a brown bag. Shout out to Stacey Lynch. Like we just decided that we just were going to do a brown bag lunch for like Black women in city government. And we'd only did it a couple of times, but every time people said the same thing. I can't believe this hasn't happened. You just need to eat something. And it was mostly silent, but just the fact that we were like eating and checking in with each other on that particular day. In hindsight, I really wish I would have known you to be able to just like get you a cracker or like a Wu-Tang song or something, or to have a space to vent. But
we squired her away upstate sometimes to have a little, nature trip.
And I'm glad that you had a community. I just also don't want the burden of like what the calling means to be the first to be like a perpetual cross. And the final thing I'll say is that as you were talking about community and trust in our gut, I really hope that people also like research. I know it doesn't sound like there are a lot of them, but there are still some matriarchal societies, right? Ghana, I think of like what it means. My family's from Nigeria, but like what it means for a country so close to be matriarchal in nature. And a lot of their sayings and a lot of what they talk about is about trusting like femme gut, like there's this, like, I'm going to mess it up, but there's one proverb I think I heard that's you never send a man to the market. And it's like this concept of women manage money. Like they trust how women
They're
manage
validating
money.
what I'm saying by a society-wide look at it. Right?
Exactly. And to be clear, the men aren't necessarily offended by it because they know what it means to uphold the family and the culture. Right. So I just put that out there that like a lot of what you're saying is also, you're not in it alone globally. There are spaces that are like, yes, everything she's saying is correct. And so we just want to thank you for being here. Part one. I can't wait for
definitely part one.
For part two.
We'll get some updates in the future too.
I'm just curious, what was your last concert? That you went to?
Concert?
Mine was Cowboy Carter.
I did go to Cowboy Carter, but that was not my last concert.
And it wasn't your last one. Okay.
No, that was in June in Paris. Not to brag, but I did go to
Paris
with my best friends. What?
I think we were there. Was it during Cannes? I think it was the weekend.
I think so.
Yeah,
it was
Paris
Miley Cyrus showed up the night we went.
Did
you get Jay-Z? Don't even.
We went the day in between.
So
we missed. No, we got no. We were so upset.
You had Paris. I had the Meadowlands, New Jersey.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But you've gone
to. Well, I went to Chapel Roan in LA. That was not that long ago. I went to Sam Smith, who's doing residency at the Warsaw.
Saw him. Yeah, I just saw him perform. No, I didn't see him in concert, but I saw him. He was performing. Yeah.
I think those were the last two. I saw Sabrina Carpenter. I took my friend's 12-year-old to Sabrina Carpenter for her first concert. It's so cute.
You probably had the biggest credibility after that.
I will say, she told me and my best friend that we were way cooler than her mom. And I was like, we've won. We're officially the cool aunts. It's our life's goal. But yeah.
Well, thank you. We definitely concert on us.
Yeah, part two. Maybe the next pod will be at a concert.
Yeah, listen, see who's playing at Barclays. I'm right down the street. We can buy last minute tickets. We can party at my apartment.
I love it.
All right.
I missed the Brandy Monica one because I had to work that weekend. I had the ticket and then I had to be in Seattle.
You had the ticket?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, can I tell you?
It was in a box too. It was wild. And then I had to give it up.
Post pod.
Well, that's our show for today. Thank you for spending time with us and for being a part of this growing community.
And as always, keep asking questions, keep taking care of yourself, and keep showing up with intention.
We'll be back next week with more conversation, more curiosity, and more light.
Until then, stay grounded, stay hopeful. See you next time on The Carpenter's Daughter.